With a population of 1.3 billion, India has a mammoth task of containing COVID-19 pandemic. Despite 72 years since India's independence, India's health infrastructure remains poor. There are 7,13,986 hospital beds available in India. This amounts to 0.55 beds per 1,000 population. The elderly population, which implies people aged 60 and above, are especially vulnerable. The availability of beds for elderly population in India is 5.18 beds per 1,000 population. This is extremely low. For comparison, note that Japan has one of the best ratios with 14.3 beds per 1,000. Being country with a large population, India's healthcare infrastructure has been stretched to its limits while trying to fight a global pandemic. India is also dealing with the possibility of almost a quarter of its population of 1.3 billion drifting into poverty due to the economic impact of COVID-19. Despite the looming disaster, Indian government has continued burning taxpayer money for unproductive purposes. Even though Prime Minister Narendra Modi has encouraged people to contribute to PM Cares Fund, the government is using its available resources for initiatives less critical. The actions of the Indian government does not show much concern for improving existing health infrastructure and addressing distress of people living in poverty. The problems faced by the poor has increased manifold in the last 3 months. Poor healthcare infrastructure and job losses are two major challenges facing Indian citizens today. Most hospitals don't have enough beds to cater to patients. And few private hospitals which have beds are charging huge amount of money that most cannot afford due to job losses. The UN Development Programme as well as the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative have jointly made a heartbreaking projection. It is projected that 260 million people will enter poverty in India in the coming months. The number of poor in India is predicted to increase by huge margins. Most of these people will be unable to access decent medical care in case they get infected with the virus. The 2019 UN Development Programme's Multidimensional Poverty Index (MPI), developed in collaboration with OPHI at the University of Oxford, had reported in a study that India lifted 271 million people out of poverty between 2006 and 2016. This was the fastest absolute reduction in poverty among 10 countries encompassing close to 2 billion people. However, the gains made in past years will be washed out due to current trends. Questions are being raised about government expenditure on medical facilities and food security for those who have been driven to the margins of society by the lockdown on account of COVID-19. Despite the scarcity of funds, Indian government has planned an initiative of a complete redesigning of the magnificent parliament in New Delhi established during colonial times. Estimated to cost Rs 20,000 crore, the Central Vista redevelopment project is one of the most ambitious government projects. The project envisages constructing a triangular parliament building next to the existing one, constructing common central secretariat, revamping of the 3-kilometer-long Rajpath from Rashtrapati Bhavan to India Gate, and North and South Block to be transformed into museums. The government's argument for revamping Central Vista is that the parliament buildings, facilities and infrastructure are inadequate to meet the current demand. They say the offices of the central government are spread over different locations which affects inter-departmental coordination. They complain there is unnecessary travel leading to congestion and pollution. And most of the existing buildings have outlived their structural lives. Apart from this, Prime Minister Modi's dream project has been a makeover of his parliamentary constituency, the city of Varanasi. The Kashi Vishwanath Corridor project is set to cost 600 crore rupees. It was officially launched in March 2018. But the project has met with stiff protests in Varanasi from people of the area around the Kashi Vishwanath temple. The protests have been vociferous against the destruction of the buildings which they claim has put livelihoods at risk, in addition to forcing thousands to leave their homes against their will. The alleged destruction of temples has led Modi and Adityanath to be compared to the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, who in popular imagination is most often associated with the destruction of temples. The protesters claim that the character of Varanasi, or Kashi as they prefer to call it, is being destroyed to make way for the corridor. This corridor is being built by crushing the soul of Kashi, a resident exclaimed. The need for grand projects in a country with a large number of poor is questionable. Millions of Indians were not getting enough food to eat even before the pandemic started. For example, India ranks 102nd out of 117 qualifying countries in the Global Hunger Index. With a score of 30.3, India suffers from a level of hunger that is serious. The government has called for increased grain distribution through the public distribution system under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. In a recent study, economists Jean Brise and Ritika Khera estimated that more than 100 million people are excluded from the public distribution system or PDS because the center's PDS allocation to states are calculated on the basis of Census 2011. The introduction of biometric-based ration distribution has made the situation worse for the poor. Himanshu, an economist at New Delhi's Jawaharlal Nehru University, says that the people who are left out could number even more than 100 million. He says it is true that malnutrition and hunger is likely to increase, but we don't know by how much or whether this is temporary or likely to persist. Most likely malnutrition will increase in the long run. Public money being used for unproductive endeavors is not new in India. On 31 October 2018, the inaugural ceremony was held for the Statue of Unity. It is a colossal statue of Indian statesman and independence activist Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. It was built with a total construction cost of 2,989 crore rupees. On 26 October 2019, the Yogi Adityanath-led Uttar Pradesh government celebrated Deepotsav, or the Festival of Lamps, in Ayodhya. 5.51 lakh diyas were lighted in Ayodhya on the banks of Saryu River, as a part of the state government's Diwali celebration. The government created a Guinness World Record for lighting diyas. The press release mentions the government's spending is 132.72 lakh rupees, which comes to around 1.33 crores. The Yogi Adityanath government has allotted 447 crore rupees for acquisition of 61 hectares in Ayodhya to house the world's tallest 251-meter-high statue of Lord Ram. This is apart from the 200 crore rupees sanctioned earlier for carrying out technical studies for building the statue. The statue will be 151 meters tall with a total height 221 meters including plinth and umbrella. The estimated cost of the statue will be Rs 2,500 crore. In Maharashtra, the Shiv Smarak or Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Memorial is a monument under construction dedicated to Shivaji, the 17th century Indian warrior king and founder of the Maratha Empire. The statue will be located in Arabian Sea, near the coast of Mumbai. The project area is planned to be spread over 130,000 square meters. It is expected to be completed in 2021. However, construction is halted as of today. The total cost of the project is estimated to be about Rs 2,500 crores. With 22% of the Indian population below the poverty line, utilizing public money for unproductive initiatives is not justified. More than a quarter of the population living in rural areas of India is below the poverty line. Out of the total population living in the rural parts of 35 states and UTs of India, 25.7% of them is living below the poverty line. In the urban areas, the situation is a bit better with 13.7% of the population living below the poverty line. The large amounts of taxpayer money spent on certain endeavors could be used to build critical health infrastructure. After all, access to basic health care is integral to the well-being of any society. Funding for vocation training courses can lead to improved employment opportunities post-lockdown. History is filled with examples of empire increasing spending on monuments and populist measures which ultimately result in their downfall. It is true that many good initiatives have been undertaken by the Indian government over the years. But until poverty is completely eradicated from India, is spending money which does not directly benefit common man justified? Public money can be used for upgrading hospitals, providing advanced health care for poor people, upgrading educational institutions and many more such measures. Basic public infrastructure can be upgraded which will help larger number of people. Until ordinary citizens do not demand things they actually need, politicians will continue to spend money on wasteful endeavors. Support should always go to those leaders who talk about how to avoid problems rather than solving them. Are the expenses incurred by the Indian government justified? Is this the reason why ordinary Indian citizens pay taxes? What do you think?